Hello, I'm Shaun Richards of Not a Yes Man's Economics. And my subject for today, something that affects everyone, which is inflation, price rises, things becoming more expensive to buy. There have been various bits of news recently that have influenced this. One of them, in economics terms, something of a headliner that the ordinary person might miss, is a change in the inflation target of the US Federal Reserve. So they've aimed for 2% a year in terms of price rises. But now, if they fall below that, there's going to be an element of catch up. So if it's 1% for a couple of years, then there's 2% total to catch up. In theory, that makes quite a big difference. But there are a couple of reasons, I think, why the impact will be more minor than that. The first is, as we look around, in spite of what you might call extraordinary efforts, because America's cut its interest rate to virtually zero, and it's expanded the balance sheet of the US Federal Reserve up towards $7 trillion. But even so, inflation's below the target. And this has been, in terms of the target, an issue for some time. The other issue is if we move geography and look at Japan. That's been in the news because of the resignation of Prime Minister Abe due to ill health. So let's wish him well for that. But there was a whole brand of economics named after him, Abenomics. What was that to do? That was to get Japan's inflation rate higher. Now, there's been an extraordinary effort here made in Japan to get this to be so. They've run large fiscal deficits. They have a very large public sector debt. It was already large, but it's larger now. And the Bank of Japan itself, negative interest rates, minus 0.1%, and also an enormous amount of bond buying. It's bought a very large proportion of Japan's national debt. But in spite of all that effort, which also, to throw in one more thing, includes buying equities, they haven't managed to get Japan really anywhere near the 2% annual inflation rate. If we look at the latest numbers out of Tokyo, we see that actually there has been 2% inflation, but over the past 5 years, not a single year. So the truth is, they haven't really got anywhere near it. So if we come back to the American situation, where does that leave us? Because in theory, there's quite a big change here. But in practice, Japan has demonstrated that, well, what will happen? And there is a swerve in this, which goes as follows. You see, these days we see inflation in different areas. Official measures of inflation have been pretty much designed to avoid the areas where we see it. What do I mean by that? Well, if you look at the area of housing, they do a swerve and discuss things like housing services. And the UK, my home country, they use a system called rental equivalence. All of these are designed to avoid the fact in many places house prices have gone up much more quickly than the inflation rate. If we switch to Canada, housing inflation using house prices, according to the Bank of Canada, has been 6% in recent times. They prefer a measure that only has it at 2.5%. Can you see the difference? Because someone who goes out to try and buy a house with the extra 2.5% a year can't get anywhere near, actually. And this has moved into other asset markets. For example, bond prices are very high. So if we look at that in terms of someone trying to buy a pension, if I can put it like that, that's got very expensive. All round, if you look at projections, they're not anticipating much growth. And then it gets even worse if you try and take an income out of it, because any interest rate or bond yield that you use is very low. We see many interest rates that are negative. We see quite a few bond yields that are negative as well. So people looking at that are actually facing a situation whereby they might put money in and get less back. How does that work? Then if we move to equity markets, again, there's an issue. Now, this is very difficult to quantify, but we see after all of these various splurges from the central bank, share prices go up. And those are the times that we find ourselves in. Thank you.